Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming along today. Fantastic achievement by James for getting this Elsevier Atlas Award. We're going to have a short introduction in a moment from the executive team, Melissa, and then we'll have an introduction by James and also some words about James himself's article. So without further ado, we'll get on with things. I'd like to welcome Melissa Brown, the executive team, to speak to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for the opportunity to open this extraordinarily exciting event today. So, good afternoon and welcome to the award ceremony by Elsevier and the University of Queensland. I'm really happy to be here in my capacity as Executive Dean of UQ's Faculty of Science. And as most of you know, early this year the School of Geography, Planning and Environmental Management merged to become the current School of Earth and Environmental Sciences, with the School of Earth Sciences, I should say. I was missing. So this acknowledges our increasingly interdisciplinary nature of earth and environmental sciences and, in particular, the importance of this area of research and teaching to the Faculty of Science and to the University of Queensland. So by consolidating our academic expertise in these areas, we're strengthening our capacity and providing greater disciplinary coherence and opportunity. So we're very proud, as I know all of you are here, that we're currently number 1 in Australia and number 12 in the world in environmental sciences in the 2017 QS World Rankings by subject. And we can't underestimate the importance of environmental sciences and the work of UQ scientists in this area is addressing the world's biggest environmental challenges, including climate change impact, biodiversity and preservation, clean water security, food and planetary functions. So with high-achieving PhD candidates like James winning this prestigious award, it's a very exciting time for science to further demonstrate the impact of our researchers have on global issues. I'd like to thank Fiona and Diana from Elsevier for joining us today and presenting the prestigious award. Elsevier awards researchers and research organisations throughout the world who have been credited with outstanding achievements to an advancement of their field and having a positive influence on society. So the prizes are a tribute to the men and women who have contributed to progress of humanity through their dedication to science, serving as a source of inspiration, and the awards help to raise the profile of talented individuals and the organisations, in addition to the profession as a whole. So just a few words about James Allan. So James grew up in Kenya, where he was surrounded by wildlife and the outdoors. School holidays were spent on safari, game driving with clients, discussing Africa's conservation challenges around the campfire and walking safaris in some of Kenya's wildest and most beautiful regions. This inspired James to pursue a conservation science PhD at UQ and working with a fantastic group of scientists on diverse research projects, including global cumulative threat mapping, conservation planning, sustainable use of wildlife, wilderness conservation, and World Heritage conservation. At the site level, James is working with WCS Mozambique, helping develop land use and conservation plans for the iconic Nyasa, I hope I pronounced that correctly, National Reserve. So previously he has worked with the African Conservation Centre in Kenya on large carnivore conservations on community land, and we are delighted that he has been the recipient of this award and look forward to his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Melissa. So it's my job to give James Allan's talk some context. My name is James Watson. I'm James's supervisor and I'm an associate professor in the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences. So to give it context, I thought, what could I do? And I thought, well, what about a photo of myself when I was a young man? This photo was taken 32 years ago on the banks of the Murrumbidgee River. My mum was showing it to my children this weekend. And, my 5-year-old and my 1-year-old couldn't believe I could be so young. Now, many of you might disagree with me, but I don't think I'm an old man. This is 32 years ago. I'm only 40 years old. And yet a lot has changed since I was on those banks of that Murrumbidgee River where that photo was taken. The Earth has rapidly changed. Since that time that photograph was taken, 2 billion people have been added to the planet. And you can see on the left-hand side, these have really altered socioeconomic trends. We are seeing a great acceleration, and not just in consumption, but energy use, GDP, the amount of money being created, and all these other massive socioeconomic trends which drive our human well-being. But obviously Earth is actually facing a calamity based on these trends, because with every trend you see up on the left, you see a concomitant trend on the right also going up. Things like carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, surface temperature are all increasing exponentially. And probably the most important thing about this is that they're all accelerating right now. It's not like any of these trends are declining or stabilising. And this has dramatic influences. Since that photograph was taken, there was 30% of people living in cities at that time. Now 50% lives in cities. And by the time I am an old man, by 2050, 70% of the world will live in the urban centres around the world. And not just the urban centres we know, but in new cities, in places in West Africa and South America. These will be massive, giant houses of urbanisation that are likely to appear in the near future. Since that photo was taken, half the world's forests have been cleared for agriculture. An area the size of Canada will have to be cleared to feed those additional people that will come onto this earth by 2050. We all live in a great mining boom in Australia, which has driven our economy in a remarkable sense, but we're not the only nation that has actually really taken advantage of our natural resources. Mining is rampant everywhere, and 25% of Africa right now is under a mining concession that hasn't actually been exploited right now. So you can only expect massive exploitation and environmental degradation based on those trends. And of course the Earth's climate has already changed. We've already altered our climate by at least 1 degree. By 2050, we'll probably change it by 3 to 5 degrees. They're really interesting facts, and they're things that are interesting to all of us, and they're important to anyone who's interested in nature, but I care about nature conservation. I care about biodiversity. And what this has meant to biodiversity has been catastrophic. This figure on the right here, the red figure, is the IUCN red list, and each of these percentages are percentages of how many species in that class are considered on the brink of extinction. So 1/4 of all mammals on Earth are actually on the brink of extinction. 13% of birds, 63% of cycads, the most primitive of plants, are on the brink of extinction due to these pressures that humans have caused. And the trends are going dramatically down. Since 1970, 40% of mammals have received a massive downturn in their populations. 75% of frogs and amphibians have disappeared or dramatically reduced in range, with 40% of fish species. So what to do about it? I've spent my life working with conservation agencies and universities trying to think through what is the best ways to overcome these challenges from a biodiversity perspective. And in January 2014, I made a commitment to come back to the University of Queensland to set up a lab which trains students and postdocs to go and solve these challenges, because I realised early on I'm not going to be the person with the intelligence or the ability or capability to do these, to solve these challenges. It's going to be the next generation which is going to really have to take advantage and take on this challenge full on. And I chose the University of Queensland, and Melissa alluded to this, because it is one of the best universities in the world when it comes to conservation. Indeed, this year it was ranked #1 in the world. And I chose here because there was an environment which was obviously already stellar. Now, the other thing is that it's an environment which is highly collaborative. I look around the room and I see great colleagues, world leaders in different fields. Eve is a world leader in environmental decisions. Mark, a leading figure, the chief scientist of the WCPA, the largest group in the International Union for Nature Conservation. Clive McAlpine, he's sitting there, he runs the government show when it comes to koala conservation and is a world thinker on climate change and deforestation. I'm surrounded by expertise. This is the perfect opportunity to actually grow a great lab and actually do some challenging science. And the lab has grown. Since January 2014, with a membership of 1, there's now 26 members of the lab, 16 PhD students, 5 postdoctoral researchers, 5 masters and honours students. all doing applied conservation research. And there are really two different things that we really do, I think, that make us stand out as a unique research lab, not just in the university, but around the world. We spend a lot of time working with agencies. So right now we have partnerships with 10 different NGOs, with industries such as Tullow and Rio Tinto, and with government organisations working hand in hand doing conservation problems. Now that's just not like saying, let's sign this memorandum of understanding and you can do your research on our land. Actually, they have to form the problem and they have to give us some money to actually be a research partner with us. So each of these examples, these 10 partners actually are giving some substantial amount of funds to do research for problems that they want answered. So it's actually an in-kind and hand-in-hand exercise. This is one example, Nick Leesenberg, which he's working on the night parrots. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the press lately of the rediscovery of the night parrots. Well, it's our PhD student in the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences which is working on this problem, working with graziers, working with mining companies, working with national parks and with Bush Heritage Australia, trying to understand what this parrot needs and what is the best management techniques. A very site-focused activity that needs to be done, otherwise this beautiful bird will go extinct. Tegan Collingwood, it was an honours student in the school. It's actually been working with Bush Heritage Australia, funded by Queensland Everybody Environment Grant, working on the golden shoulder parrot. Now this parrot up here is only found in the state of Queensland. It is endemic to this state and is declining rapidly. And Tegan is the only researcher at the moment working on this from a university level, and she's working hand in hand with Bush Heritage Australia and Oakland Rangers, trying to solve the question of how do you actually ensure this parrot survives. They don't even know why it's declining. It could be dogs and cats, it could be cats, it could be predation from a native bird, it could be fire dynamics. Just getting to that basic question is actually really key. And I'm proud to say that this is again another good example inside Australia of us doing work that should lead to an outcome. But it's not just in Australia. We work in many places around the world. Glenn Alpha is working with people on Tonglei Sap, working on fisheries management and trying to work out what the best way to actually ensure these very poor people can get a livelihood, but the huge endemic fish populations of the Tonglei Sap can still persist in the future. Well, Amelia, with working with people from Flora and Fauna International in Myanmar. Now this team here, Amelia was just telling me, this team here is the first dive team that the country's ever produced who can then look at coral reefs and actually understand what is the problems they're facing with sedimentation, with overfishing, with overharvesting to inform planning. And Amelia is up there, has been up there training them to work out the techniques around that. We have Kendall Jones, who isn't able to be with us today. He's been working in Papua New Guinea right now, working with government officials on land use planning. But again, another good example of someone who's applying spatial skills, learned from this university, he's an undergraduate here, and actually applying it and training and bringing out local capacity around the world. And the list goes on. We work in many countries, as I mentioned, and as I say, the deal, if you've got a red spot on this map, is that we work with an industry partner who funds us to do work in that country. So now, as someone said, the sun never sets on green fire science, which is nice. We actually work around the world, which I'm very proud of. The other part of the equation we do is trying to scale up. So we work with another series of partners who work at high level policy settings to try and influence top-down policy at global settings, regional settings and global settings. So we're in partnership with all these organisations, and you'll hear James talk about our relationship with UNESCO, which deals with World Heritage. But we have partnerships with the United Nations Development Programme, with the Biodiversity Indicators Partnership, and with the best universities in the world who do policy. So we've got a very active research program there. One of the things that I'm most proud about, and I want to introduce this because it helps James introduce what he's doing, is the work we've done on an updated human footprint. One of the most profound things in my life that I recognise when I've been travelling around as a conservation professional working for a conservation non-government organisation called Wildlife Conservation Society was the absolute dearth of spatially explicit knowledge which can help a country program or a region assess how they're doing. The global maps were appalling. When I went to Nagoya in Japan to help develop the 2020 plan for the Convention for Biological Diversity, I think Mark, you were there as well. In Nagoya, the best data they had was 1998 spatial maps. So all the nations were sorting out their targets based on a map which was 12 years out of date. It shocked me, and I thought one of the things we could easily do is improve this. And one of the things we have done is built the human footprint map and assessed how the human footprint has changed over time. Now, James will talk about this in more detail, about how this was created. But these maps showed some really interesting things. Since 1993, which was when the Earth Summit occurred, when the Earth's nations not only signed the Convention for Biological Diversity, but they founded the United Framework Convention for Climate Change. The two great Earth frameworks were signed in the one year in 1993. And since that year, the Earth's human footprint has only changed in a negative sense by 6%. And the Earth's population has increased by 21%, and the Earth's GDP has gone up by 153%. So that is a kind of a good news story. What it shows is that there's a decoupling maybe going on between how we develop and how we take our resources from the economies and actually influence the human world. So that's one good news story. And interesting, the media didn't pick up on it. What the media picked up was the bad news stories, and that is half the world, what this map showed, is in a highly degraded state. That we've already modified half the planet in a way that is probably impossible to restore. And what was even more dramatic was the fact that when you think about the last intact landscapes and seascapes on the planet, those places that function like where humans haven't touched it, they're functioning in ecological and evolutionary ways that they're meant to be. They're literally the most pristine places on Earth. We've lost 3 million square kilometres of those places in just 16 years. That is half the size of Australia. That is the size of Alaska gone. And once you lose wilderness, you can't replace it. You can't restore it. It's gone as an entity. And there's only 20% left on the planet. Now, any paper which says catastrophic as the first line is bound to get media. Bound, absolutely. If you want to know how to get media, just use the word significant. Significant's okay. Catastrophic's good. The media like that. But it got a lot of media. It was picked up by Time magazine. We were able to write opinion pieces on it. BBC News, front page. The Guardian. I was proud of the fact we got lots of media, but I was actually kind of saddened at the fact that we really didn't think about the solutions. We just said, look, there's a problem occurring and no one's talking about it. Which basically gets me to James's research. This is a great shot of a protected area working. Can anyone tell me where the protected area is? It's obviously on the right. It's the rabbit-proof fence for anyone who's interested. And what I love about this photo is the cloud line follows the fence, which I think is quite profound in its own right. If you're a farmer in that system, you'd know maybe we did something bad here. But the fence is working, and what is one of the most amazing things that has happened in the last 100 years is the significant growth of the protected area network around the world. Since 1853, which should have been there since Yellowstone was formed, the protected area state has grown dramatically. If you put that into a map around the world, at least all of South America and Central America will be in a protected area state if you put it all in one landmass. It's an enormous amount of land. Almost 17% of the planet is actually now in some kind of protection. The question is it working? And I think the way you have to look at that is look at data sets like a human footprint on protected area networks and actually ask the question, well, that's nice, it's been put in a protected area and we celebrate this, but is this actually altering the pressures humans put on the land and the sea? Now, what James is going to talk about is not about the protected area network per se. There's been a talk about the jewels in the crown, the natural world heritage part of that protected area network. There's 230,000 protected areas out there right now. I think only 230 are natural world heritage. So I wanted to give you that context to give James a chance to talk about his research. If I don't get a chance, well done, James. Congratulations on your research.
Thank you, James.
Right.
Thanks, James. I'll quickly take the chance to introduce our team of international partners who helped on this project. Sean and Kendall are both PhD students here in SEAS. Oscar Venter was the lead author of the Human Footprint paper. He's based in Canada. And Bastian Bertsky and Yishuan Shi work at the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, and they're World Heritage experts and official advisors to UNESCO on the science behind protecting World Heritage. Now, the World Heritage Convention was implemented as a direct response to the pressures of industrial development and what that was doing to the environment. And they basically set out to identify and protect the most iconic and important places in the world, both cultural and natural, we focused on natural, of which there are 230 sites. And a good way to think about this is if there were only 200 places on Earth we could save, these are the 200. They're regarded as global assets, important for all of humanity. There's this idea of outstanding universal value. And so, to gain World Heritage status, a country nominates a place, and it has to fall under one of these strict criteria. The first is exceptional natural beauty. The second is amazing geological features. This includes the fossil record and Earth's history. Any ongoing ecological and evolutionary processes. And, of course, the most important places for the conservation of biodiversity. And these are all iconic landscapes. I'm sure you're familiar with many of them. Each is unique, and they're irreplaceable. Once you lose the Great Serengeti migration, we're not going to get that back. There's another important part to being a World Heritage Site, and that is the integrity of the site. There's this expectation that World Heritage should be perfect, or as near perfect as possible, and certainly not getting worse. Through strict management, they should be getting better. And countries need to protect them. Official efforts must be in place. And it's really interesting, actually, because when a World Heritage Site is inscribed, a country almost gives up control of that. They now have to report to the world, and they're held accountable by the global community on how they protect that place. This is done through monitoring and reporting. It's really survey-based, a lot of qualitative analyses. But there's a problem with this, is it's open to politics. And anyone who follows the Great Barrier Reef saga here will know a lot about that. And we thought, let's fill a big gap here and use some quantitative data sets like the human footprint and other satellite data, which I'll talk about, because satellites don't lie. It's a really fair way to report on the condition and how countries are progressing at protecting their World Heritage Sites. So the human footprint data set, I'll give you a little bit of information on how it was created and what it means. It's got these 8 pressures, 8 of the most harmful things that humans can do to the natural environment. And each one of those 8 pressures was scored based on how harmful it is. We have these for 2 time periods, and these were combined into a single metric at a 1 square kilometre resolution across Earth. And it's the most comprehensive and accurate threat map available. So best data set of its kind. And as we move up that scale, if we start at a human footprint of 0, these are the wilderness areas that James was talking about. Think the centre of the Amazon, the centre of Australia, the Congo rainforest. By the time we move up that scale to 4, we're already looking at conversion to pasture and grazing land with slow human population increases in between. By the time we get to 7, it's fully converted to agriculture. And by the time you're at 20, you've got a mixture of threats. We've got housing, roads, agriculture. And there's a growing body of research suggesting that this threshold of 4 is really crucial for species extinction risk. And it's a sort of a fair level of where you can consider land human-dominated and degraded. And we validated this data set. All these dots you can see, we zoomed in on them. There were 3,000 of these all over the world. And using satellite imagery, we analysed and looked to see if the pressures we're saying are there were actually there. And the map was incredibly accurate. And the only places where we missed pressures was where there are small dirt roads. So if anything, we're underestimating what's going on. The second data set we used was the Global Forest Watch. This is 30-meter resolution data on forest cover change over the last decade. Once again, the best available data of its sort, and it complements the human footprint really nicely because the human footprint measures the pressures and the threats, whereas the forest change data is a change in the state, the actual ecological condition of a World Heritage Site, which we were looking at. So we examined the 2 data sets across the respective time periods in all terrestrial World Heritage Sites. We also projected a 10-kilometre buffer around the sites to see what was going on in the landscapes surrounding them, and so on to what we found. These are the human footprint results, and along the bottom here we've got the level of the human footprint. So anything To the bad side of that line is an increase in human footprint. The height of the bars represents the number of World Heritage sites falling in that bin. And you can see the majority of sites have increased. We're not as confident about the data for the decreases because, as I just said, we could be missing pressures. Most of the sites increasing were in Asia and Africa, but what really concerned us was these sites on the end, increasing by 5 to 10 rungs up that human footprint ladder. Manas Wildlife Sanctuary, a place like Simian National Park in Ethiopia, which has all these really endangered species, the stars of David Attenborough's planet Earth, and this is what it's starting to look like. A sea of agriculture is smashing up against the plateaus. On top of the plateaus, we've got human settlements starting to creep in. This is within the boundaries of the World Heritage Site, and overstocking and overgrazing. And UNESCO have recognized Simian as a World Heritage Site in danger. This is Kahuzi-Biega in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and you're looking at illegal mining within the Natural Heritage Site borders. This is just the physical damage, let alone the mercury and all the chemicals that are going into the river systems and the environment there. And again, it's home to a lot of weird and wacky creatures like the bongo. When we map this across the world, the red, yellow, and orange areas are World Heritage Sites that have increased. The changes are happening everywhere. Central America is not faring very well. Asia is doing particularly badly, but even in Australia, you can see that the pressure is increasing. It's not by much, but it's increasing in all our World Heritage Sites, except for one in the very middle there. Our forest loss results show a similar trend. Along the bottom, the x-axis here, you've got the percentage loss and then the number of heritage sites in each bin. And forest loss occurred in almost every single site, 90% of the sites analysed. In most places, this was small, less than 1%, but when you're dealing with thousands of squared kilometres of protected area, that's a lot of forest. And again, some places losing 10 to 20% of their forested area, 2,500 kilometres. 300, 500 kilometres of forest. These are big numbers. If we look at the Rio Platano Reserve in Honduras, it's some of the most biodiverse rainforest on the planet. It's an interesting story because there was a lot of drug trafficking, the region became insecure, and immediately clearing happened, communities have moved in, there's houses being set up, and that's 300 square kilometres of prime conservation land that we have lost and we will not get back. Same story in the Virungas. That line of agriculture you see there, every year it just creeps further up the volcanoes. The forest loss patterns were different across the globe. What jumped out at me is North America. And when I first saw this result, I thought, geez, I've made a mistake, that Americans are really good at conservation. But I ran it again, and no, there's a lot of forest being lost in North America. And the culprit is this little fellow, the mountain pine beetle, which is a natural part of the ecosystem. It burrows into the pine trees, killing them. They become susceptible to fire, and it's a natural system. But with climate change, the winters can no longer kill the beetles to keep them at safe levels, and they're destroying huge tracts of forest, and that's the result. And I mean, in Yellowstone, 6% of its forest was lost. And Yellowstone, the heartland of conservation. And so these results it was interesting to see how they were picked up, how people responded to this. The last bit of sort of data and results, I promise, and it's not as confusing as it looks. On the y-axis here, we have the change in human footprint. Each dot corresponds to a World Heritage Site, and the colour is the continent it's in. So anything above this line means the human footprint increased in that site. If we look at all the red squares, those are the Asian World Heritage Sites. We also looked at the buffer zones and the change in human footprint, and that's what we've got along the x-axis here. And that gives us an interesting story of how a site is faring compared to what's going on in the landscape around it. And so anything below that line, the change inside has been less than change outside. And that changes the story for Asia a little bit. Those sites are being damaged, but they're doing a hell of a lot better than the surrounding places, given the huge pressure that they're under. But it's a small positive, but the expectation for World Heritage is that they should be fully conserved Each one's unique, and any degradation is unacceptable. This is Chitwan National Park in Nepal, and that's the national park in the background. This is the buffer zone, and each year the population density increases and the pressure on that reserve increases. And this is just a summary of our key findings, and our most concerning finding is that 10 or 20 sites are really being damaged, possibly beyond repair, if we don't act immediately. And we're proud to have provided data that can help do that and inform the authorities so that they can respond. I think the silver lining on this study was how the media picked up on it. There's a lot of public goodwill for World Heritage conservation that I think we can capitalize on. People care, people are interested, and we need to get that message up to the people who make decisions and let our governments know that we're not going to compromise our World Heritage for short-term economic gains. And we've been working away this last week to help facilitate that by creating a web platform to showcase our results and make them accessible to park managers and conservation practitioners. We're really proud to release that today. It's on our Greenfire Science website, and you can pick the forest loss or the human footprint results, and you get a list of all the sites and all the data of what's going on. This is Rio Platano again, and that's the forest loss occurring inside its boundaries. And something I hadn't thought about before was the sum of that loss is only 8%, but when you look at it up here, that looks more like a third, given all the fragmentation of that area that's been degraded and lost. The World Heritage List is still being expanded. This work and all James's work with the human footprint really raises the question about the integrity and condition of the environment within the places we protect. And so building off the wilderness work, we're trying to map the most intact landscapes in the world, the wilderness areas, and advise the World Heritage Convention on where gaps in coverage are, where their coverage currently is, and they need to focus on preserving wilderness to help move forward and conserve the most outstanding places across the world. And I just want to leave you with one final thought, which is if we destroyed the pyramids or the Acropolis or any of our cultural heritage sites, there would be a huge international uproar. We would not let this happen. Yet right now across our planet, we're fundamentally destroying our natural heritage sites. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'd love to field questions if anyone wants to raise any points. Eve?
Has anyone ever looked at whether, for example, if you have a World Heritage area in your country, and you're a developing nation, have you ever done like a multi-criteria decision analysis or something to look at whether it's actually worth it for the country to have it? So what I mean by that is livelihoods, like you can clear it, you can have food, you can do all this stuff, or you can have the environment for its sake, or you can have tourism, which may come in terms of dollars. Has anyone ever done that trade-off?
I'm not sure. I mean, people say that World Heritage Sites bring a lot of development opportunities and sustainable development in the buffer zones around them. I don't know of any analyses that have specifically looked at it. Mark may know more about that. I'm not sure, but yeah, it'd be something. It would be.
There have been some studies of tourism and World Heritage and the impact that it has on tourism and the economic benefits for that. And if you look at something, I mean, unfortunately the reef is degrading, but one of the reasons that the government has put $400 million into it is because of the economic studies that show that tourism in the Great Barrier Reef is worth $5 billion a year. Commercial fishing is worth a couple of $100 million. So those sorts of things can be powerful.
Yeah.
You've got to be a little careful because they can also work against you. But there have been some, but not globally comprehensive studies.
Yeah, it'd be interesting in developing nations as opposed to Australia.
It would. Jonathan?
James, great talk, thanks. I just wonder whether you've seen any response from countries that show whether large degradation on the ground in terms of strategies they might do or put in place to prevent this.
Yeah, I don't know of any major responses being put in place, but I did have a lot of managers reach out actually when we released the paper. people managing World Heritage sites in Spain and other places across the world emailed in saying, can you send me the maps? I want to respond. We want to see what's going on in our World Heritage site, which I thought was very positive. And that was what sort of led us to create the website, try and get this data out there for everyone to access. Mark?
Yeah, you mentioned the World Heritage Outlook report that IUCN produces. I'm just wondering whether you've been approached by the World Heritage Unit in terms of using, because they're currently going through the next round of the Outlook assessment, whether they've approached you to make that one of the primary inputs into that assessment that they're doing.
Unfortunately not. Interestingly enough, the paper's been really positively picked up by the public and the media, but the decision makers have not liked it. And the IUCN and UNESCO don't seem happy with the story that we're telling. And no, we haven't been approached, is the short answer. But yeah, and that's why I spend a lot of time talking about the data as well, because this paper's come under a lot of scrutiny, and it is nice to be able to fall back on your data and say, this is good stuff, it's best available, and we're really confident in what we're presenting. Amelia.
That was a great talk, James, and an amazing study. I'm just wondering, because obviously you can look at those results and say the countries that have these World Heritage sites need to lift their game, but in a time where inadequate resourcing is a really big issue for so many countries, does the World Heritage site, do you think that they have some responsibility in them helping these countries better manage their areas?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way it works is World Heritage is an extra layer of protection on top. It comes with expertise, some resources and money, I think. And yeah, the international community is meant to be helping, poorer nations, developing nations protect their heritage sites. All right, well, thank you very much. I'll hand back to Matt.
Thank you, James. I'd now like to welcome Fiona Barron and Diane Jones from the Elsevier organisation. Just put their... working.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, very nice to be here. Thanks for inviting us along. I think you invited us along. We might have invited ourselves anyway. We're very pleased to be here. We're actually representing Elsevier. The Journal Biological Conservation is managed out of the European office, so we haven't come all that way. But we do manage the journals programme in Australia. We publish on behalf of societies based in Australia, essentially over here. And one of us used to work in this area in Elsevier a long time ago. It might have even been last century. So we do have some kind of tenuous connection to biological conservation. So very happy to be here. Before we present James with the award, just wanted to give you a little bit of background about the Atlas Award. So it was launched in early 2015 by Elsevier. The idea being to showcase research and sort of promote and recognise research that has an important societal impact. So the thinking is that if we bring even wider attention, it's a good way to bring wider attention to this research, or to try and help you get wider attention for the research. So the selection process is that essentially there's an independent panel of experts who work on NGOs around the world. So every month we send a shortlist to them of papers published around our 1,800 journals, and they vote on which article they feel has the most impact on society. And the one with most votes wins. And so this is the one that's won for February 2017. So the other thing that we do as part of that is to I think James has already spoken with a scientific journalist at our office, and essentially they've written an article about it, and we've released a press release and doing some press work in conjunction with UQ, so that comes with the award as well. So the Atlas Advisory Board, totally independent, members serve for 12 months, and you can see the type of organisations that they represent here: Oxfam, WWF, and various NGOs around the world, UNEP as well. So that these guys kind of, like I say, they vote every month based on a short list of articles. You can see also here, we just put a list of the recent articles that have been won, that have won, and you can see they cover a wide range of topics, and they're also from researchers around the world. I think James is only the second one based in Australia, so it's very exciting for us to be able to present him with the award. Go ahead.
So, yeah, very delighted to be here and to award you this Atlas Award. Certificate, and it's laminated, but if you want an ordinary copy to Frank, we can send you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thanks to my co-authors and supervisor, James Watson, who helped make this happen.